chapter of our course and book teaches measurement skills that managers use on the job every day. For example, Chapter 8 teaches you the measurement skills that managers use to answer the questions, how should I create a financial plan for next year? However, it is vitally important that you also understand managerial accounting involves more than just crunching numbers. To be successful managers, you must complement their measurement skills with 6 business management perspectives that go beyond the numbers to enable intelligent planning, control, and decision-making. So let's have this wider perspective in order to give a fuller business context, starting with ethics. Ethical behavior is the lubricant that keeps the economy running. Without that lubricant, the economy would operate much less efficiently. Less would be available to consumers, quality would be lower, and prices would be higher. In other words, without fundamental trust in the integrity of business, the economy would operate much less efficiently. Thus, for the good of everyone, including profit-making companies, it is vitally important that business be conducted within an ethical framework that builds and sustains trust. Other relevant topic, and I can say this one is one of the most relevant. I studied my master's degree specialization in this topic and also made my master dissertation studying with Audencia Nantes, a French university, and Boston University. So you can see I love to talk about this topic, which is strategic management. Companies do not succeed by sheer luck. Instead, they need to develop a strategy that defines how they intend to succeed in the marketplace. A strategy is a game plan that enables a company to attract customers by distinguishing itself from competitors. The focal point of a company's strategy should be its target customers. A company can only succeed if it creates a reason for its target customers to choose it over a competitor. These reasons, or what are more formally called customer value propositions, are the essence of a strategy. There are broad categories for strategy management, even more than the ones mentioned in the book. But basically the focus or the final product of strategic management is to seek a sustainable competitive advantage. This means your customers are able to see some value over competitors, but being sustainable means that you can carry this value proposition in long terms or many years, meaning you have a long-term purpose. There are multiple examples for this. I can give you a good one. As you may see in the presentation, is Cirque du Soleil, which is a Canadian firm dedicated to entertainment. We are able to notice very quickly its sustainable competitive advantage, as they don't have a clear competitor that is able to replicate its business model, at least in America. Can you imagine its planning process? With every strategy, plan, and decision involves risks. Enterprise risk management is a process used by a company to identify those risks and develop responses to them that enable it to be reasonably assured of meeting its goals. In managerial accounting, companies use controls to reduce the risk that their plans will not be achieved. Let's see an example. If a company plans to build a new manufacturing facility within a predefined budget and time frame, it will establish and monitor control measures to ensure that the project is concluded on time and within the budget. Risk management is also a critically important aspect of decision-making. For example, when a company quantifies the labor cost savings that it can realize by sending jobs overseas, it should complement its financial analysis with a prudent assessment of the accompanying risk. Will the overseas manufacturer use child labor? Will the product's quality decline, thereby leading to more warranty repairs, customer complaints, and lawsuits? These are the types of risks that managers should incorporate into their decision-making. A corporate responsibility perspective, corporate social responsibility, or known CSR, is a concept whereby organizations consider the needs of all stakeholders when making decisions. CSR extends beyond legal compliance to include voluntary actions that satisfy stakeholders' expectations. Companies serve other stakeholders such as customers, employees, suppliers, communities, environment, and human rights advocates whose interests are tied to the company's performance. The purpose is not only to make profits. Yes, it should be one of the most relevant, but there are many scientific proofs that CSR enables advantages to companies that apply this concept. For example, there is a relevant growth rate of investors seeking firms that incorporate CSR strategies. There's even an index for affiliated stock exchange companies that are leaders in this field. If a company pollutes the environment or fails to provide safe and human working conditions for its employees, the negative publicity from environmental and human rights activists could cause the company's customers to defect and its best and brightest job candidates to apply elsewhere. This explains why in managerial accounting, a manager must establish plans, implement controls, and make decisions that consider impact on all stakeholders. In the slide, you are able to see 4 prioritization matrix, and we can see that its number 1 CSR strategy is to apply electrification and alternative fuels to their new models. A process management perspective. Most companies organize themselves by functional departments, such as the marketing department, the research and development department, and the accounting department. These departments tend to have a clearly defined chain of command that specifies superior and subordinate relationships. Managers need to understand the value chain to be effective in terms of planning, also on control and decision-making. Let's put an example. If a company's engineers plan to design a new product, they must communicate with the manufacturing department to ensure that the product can actually be produced. The marketing department to ensure that the customers will buy the product. The distribution department to ensure that the large volumes of the product can be cost-effectively transported to customers. And finally, the accounting department to ensure that the product will increase profits. Finally, a leadership perspective. And put very careful attention to this perspective, as I'm very sure that you will have a leadership role in the future due to your academic excellence. That's why this is a top-ranked program in Mexico and why you are able to compete at international levels. An organization's employees bring diverse needs, beliefs, and goals to the workplace. Therefore, an important role for organizational leaders is to unite the behaviors of their fellow employees around 2 common themes: pursuing strategic goals and making optimal decisions. To fulfill this responsibility, leaders need to understand how intrinsic motivation, extrinsic incentives, and cognitive bias influence human behavior. Intrinsic motivation refers to motivation that comes from within us. Stop for a moment and identify the greatest accomplishments of your life. Then, ask yourself, what motivated you to achieve this goal? In all likelihood, you achieve it because you wanted to, not because someone forced you to do it. In other words, you were intrinsically motivated. Similarly, an organization is more likely to prosper when its employees are intrinsically motivated to pursue its interests. A leader who employees perceive as credible and respectful of their values to the organization can increase the extent to which those employees are intrinsically motivated to pursue strategic goals. Many organizations use extrinsic incentives to highlight important goals and to motivate employees to achieve them. For example, assume a company establishes the goal of reducing the time needed to perform a task by 20%. In addition, assume the company agrees to pay a bonus compensation to its employees if they achieve the goal within 3 months. In this example, the company is using a type of extrinsic incentive known as a bonus to highlight a particular goal and to presumably motivate a employee to achieve it. While cognitive biases cannot be eliminated, effective leaders should take 2 steps to reduce the negative impacts. First, they should acknowledge their own susceptibility to cognitive bias. For example, a leader's judgment might be clouded by optimism bias. That means being overly optimistic in assessing the likelihood of future outcomes, or self-enhancement bias, overestimating one's strengths and underestimating one's weaknesses relative to others. Second, they should acknowledge the presence of cognitive bias in others and introduce techniques to minimize their adverse consequences. For example, to reduce the risk of confirmation bias, which is a bias where people pay greater attention to information that confirms their preconceived notions while devaluing information that contradicts them. Or groupthink bias, which is a bias where some group members support a course of action solely because other group members do. A leader may routinely appoint independent teams of employees to assess the credibility of recommendations set forth by other individuals and groups.